It was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. A day carefully planned down to the smallest detail. A day that promised a new beginning, a complete family, and a future that looked perfect from the outside. The garden was glowing under soft golden sunlight. White flowers hung gracefully from a beautifully decorated arch, their petals moving gently with the wind as if they were whispering blessings into the air. Rows of guests sat quietly, dressed in elegance, smiling, waiting, watching. At the center of it all stood Adrian, a man who had built his life from nothing. At 35, Adrian was known as a successful businessman, respected, admired, the kind of man people looked up to. But beyond the success, beyond the polished image, there was something deeper about him. He was a father, a single father. His daughter Emma sat in the front row, her small hands resting in her lap, her face glowing with excitement and innocence. She believed in this moment. She believed that today would change everything for the better. And Adrian, he wanted to believe that too. Because sometimes we don't chase happiness, we chase the idea of it. The music began to play, soft, emotional, perfectly timed, and then she appeared. Sophia, dressed in a breathtaking white gown, walking slowly down the aisle, her veil flowing behind her like a dream. The guests turned their heads, smiles spreading across their faces. She looks stunning. She's perfect for him. That's what a real wedding looks like. But Adrian didn't smile the way everyone expected him to. Because while Sophia looked perfect, something didn't feel right. Her smile was flawless, too flawless. Her eyes, however, they didn't match. There was no warmth in them, no depth, just something controlled, something distant. And Adrian noticed it. That, like many people do, he ignored it. Because everything else looked right. Because everything else looked right. Because everything else made sense. Because walking away from something perfect is harder than accepting something wrong. The ceremony was about to begin. The priest stood ready, holding the book, preparing to unite two lives. The guests leaned forward slightly, anticipation filling the air. And then something shifted. At the far edge of the garden, near the entrance, a woman stood. She didn't belong there. Not in a place like this. Her clothes were worn, slightly torn at the edges. Dust clung to them, as if she had traveled a long, difficult road just to arrive. Her hair was messy, falling loosely around her face. But her eyes were calm, unnaturally calm. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't even moving. She was just watching. A few guests noticed her. Who is she? Why is she here? Should someone ask her to leave? But no one moved, because something about her presence felt heavy, different, unexplainable. And then Adrian saw her. The moment his eyes met hers, everything else faded. The music, the guests, even Sophia standing beside him. It all disappeared. Because in that moment he remembered a night he couldn't forget. Rain poured heavily, the kind that blurs the world and forces everything to slow down. Adrian had been driving home, exhausted, lost in his thoughts, drowning in responsibilities and expectations. And then he saw her, sitting on the side of the road, soaked, alone, broken, but not defeated. Something inside him told him to stop, and he did. He stepped out of the car, the rain immediately soaking through his clothes. "Are you okay?" he asked. She looked up. Those same eyes, calm, deep, unreadable. "I'm fine," she said quietly, but she wasn't. Anyone could see that. Adrian offered her food, water, help, a ride. But she refused. "I don't want to depend on anyone," she said. Those words stayed with him. Because they weren't just words. They were strength. They were pain. They were truth. And now, she was here, at his wedding, watching him. The priest's voice pulled him back to reality. "Do you, Adrian, take Sophia to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Silence filled the air. All eyes were on him, waiting, expecting. Adrian looked at Sophia, beautiful, perfect, everything he was supposed to want. Then he looked at Emma, his daughter, his world. Her eyes were full of hope. And then he looked at the woman again, and suddenly everything became clear. This wasn't love. What he felt for Sophia wasn't real. It was convenience, expectation, a decision made by logic. But that woman, she was real. The way she stood, the way she spoke, the way she refused to depend on anyone even when she had nothing. That was something he couldn't ignore. That was something his heart recognized. Adrian took a deep breath, and then he let go of Sophia's hand. The moment froze. "Adrian," she whispered, but he didn't respond. Instead, he stepped back. A small step that changed everything. Gasps filled the garden. Confusion spread like wildfire. What is he doing? Is this part of the ceremony? No, something's wrong. Sophia's face changed. "What are you doing?" she demanded. But Adrian didn't answer, because his answer was already written in his next move. He turned and walked, not toward the altar, not toward the guests, but toward her. Every step echoed, every heartbeat louder than the last. "Adrian, stop!" Sophia shouted, but he didn't, because for the first time he was listening to his heart. He stopped in front of the woman. Up close, she looked fragile, but her eyes were still strong, still calm. "Why are you here?" he asked softly. She looked at him and said, "I just wanted to see if you were truly happy." That was it. That was the moment everything broke, because deep down he knew the truth. He wasn't. Adrian turned back toward the crowd, toward Sophia, toward the life he was about to live. And then he said, "I can't do this." The words hit like thunder. Silence followed, heavy, uncomfortable, unbelievable. "What do you mean you can't do this?" Sophia shouted. Her voice cracked, her perfect image shattered. Adrian remained calm. "This isn't right," he said. "You're insane," she screamed. But he didn't argue, because this wasn't about being right. This was about being honest. For the first time in a long time, he reached for the woman's hand. She hesitated, but didn't pull away. And then, in front of everyone, he said the words no one expected. "She is the one I will marry." The world stood still. No one moved. No one spoke. Because no one understood what had just happened. The silence that followed his words was louder than any storm. No one moved. No one breathed. It was as if time itself had frozen, just to understand what had just happened. Sophia stood there, her face pale, her perfect composure shattered into pieces. The dream wedding she had imagined, the life she had planned, everything slipped through her fingers in a matter of seconds. "Are you out of your mind?" She finally screamed, her voice breaking through the silence like glass shattering on the ground. But Adrian didn't look at her. For the first time, he didn't feel the need to explain himself to the world, because deep down, he already knew the truth. And sometimes, truth doesn't need approval. It just needs courage. Emma, sitting in the front row, slowly stood up. Her small face was filled with confusion, fear, and something deeper, something only a child can feel when their world suddenly changes. "Dad," she whispered. That one word, it hit Adrian harder than anything else. He turned toward her, his expression softening instantly. For a moment, everything else faded again. The guests, the whispers, the judgment. It was just him and his daughter. He walked toward her slowly and knelt down in front of her. "I'm sorry," he said gently. Emma looked at him, her eyes searching for answers. "Why did you stop the wedding?" she asked, her voice trembling. Adrian took a deep breath. Because this was the moment that mattered most, not the guests, not the embarrassment, not even the broken wedding. This moment with his daughter. Because I don't want to lie, he said softly. Emma frowned slightly. I don't understand, Adrian smiled sadly. One day you will, he said. But listen to me. I want you to grow up knowing that love is not something you pretend. It's not something you force, and it's not something you choose, just because it looks perfect. Emma stayed quiet, listening, absorbing. It's something you feel, Adrian continued. And when it's real, you don't have to question it. Emma slowly looked past him, toward the woman. The same woman everyone was staring at. The same woman who didn't belong. Is it her? Emma asked quietly. Adrian didn't hesitate. Yes. Emma looked at the woman again, longer this time, and then something unexpected happened. She smiled, a small, innocent smile. Then, she must be special, Emma said. Those words, they changed everything. Because in that moment, Adrian knew he hadn't lost everything. He still had the most important part of his life. His daughter. Behind them, chaos had begun to rise. Guests were whispering loudly now, some shocked, some angry, some even amused. This is unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this. This is madness. Sophia, however, wasn't whispering. She was shaking, her hands trembling with rage and humiliation. You think this is love, she said, her voice cold now. You think throwing everything away for a stranger makes you noble? Adrian stood up slowly, now facing her. She's not a stranger, he said calmly. Oh, really? Sophia snapped. Then tell everyone. Who is she? The question echoed. And for the first time, all eyes turned to the woman. She stood still, quiet, unmoving, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Adrian looked at her, then back at the crowd, and then he spoke. A few months ago, I found her sitting alone in the rain, he said. The crowd listened, confused but curious. She had nothing, no home, no support, no one to rely on. Sophia laughed bitterly. And that's your love story? You felt sorry for her? Adrian shook his head. No, he said firmly. I respected her. That word changed the tone completely. Because when I offered her help, she refused, Adrian continued. Not because she didn't need it, but because she didn't want to lose herself. The crowd grew quieter. Even Sophia didn't interrupt. That night, Adrian said, I realized something. That strength isn't about having everything. It's about standing tall when you have nothing. He paused, and I've never been able to forget her since. The woman finally moved, just a step forward. Her presence alone shifted the air again. I didn't come here to ruin anything, she said softly. Her voice was calm, gentle, but powerful. I just wanted to see if he was truly happy. Sophia scoffed. And now you got what you wanted. The woman looked at her. No, she said quietly, this isn't what I wanted. That surprised everyone. I didn't ask him to do this, she continued. I didn't expect this, and I don't need this. She turned to Adrian. You don't owe me anything, she said. Her words were honest, real, and that's what made them powerful. Adrian stepped closer. It's not about owing you, he said. Then, what is it about? She asked. Adrian looked into her eyes, and for the first time, there was no confusion, no hesitation, just truth. It's about choosing what's real, he said. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. Sophia stood there, defeated, not because she lost a man, but because she lost control. You'll regret this, she said quietly. Adrian didn't respond. Because regret comes from ignoring the truth. And for once, he hadn't. Sophia turned and walked away, her heels hitting the ground with sharp, angry steps. One by one, some guests followed. Others stayed, because deep down, they knew they had just witnessed something rare, something uncomfortable. but real. Emma slowly walked toward the woman, standing in front of her. Looking up, "Hi," Emma said. The woman hesitated. Then she smiled. A small, warm smile. "Hi," she replied. "What's your name?" Emma asked. "Lena," she said. Emma nodded. "I'm Emma," she said proudly. Lena smiled again. "I know." Emma looked at her carefully, then said something that made everyone pause again. "Are you going to stay?" Lena looked at Adrian, then back at Emma. "I don't know," she answered honestly. Emma took her hand. "You should," she said. That simple gesture meant more than anything else. Adrian watched them, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something he hadn't felt before. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was honest. Days later, the world had moved on. The story had spread. People talked. Some judged. Some admired. But Adrian didn't care anymore, because for the first time, he wasn't living for them. He was living for Ott, himself. And for what truly mattered, Lena didn't suddenly become part of his life overnight. There was no fairy tale transformation, no instant happy ending. Because real stories don't work like that. They take time. Trust. Understanding. But something had begun. Something real. Something unforced. One evening, as the sun set quietly in the distance, Emma sat between Adrian and Lena, holding both their hands, smiling. And in that simple moment, there was no past, no judgment, no expectations, just something rare, something honest, something real. And sometimes that's all love really is.